All right. So with Maya, we're going to go through the basics today and also going to talk a little bit about how you can start to craft some geometry, start to manipulate it. Feel free for this clinic to follow along. I'm going to keep it fairly contained. It's not going to be too detailed in terms of the models. It's just going to be showing you how to do something and either follow along and do it with me, or you can simply take notes. So I'll let you decide how to go about it. So the Maya interface will open up with the viewport set to perspective. We have got the poly modeling shelf exposed already, which will have some geometry options up along the left-hand side and have other mesh affecting tools alongside that. So that's for modeling. We'll stick with the modeling shelf today. We don't need to go any further with this one. We've got our navigation and moving tools along the left-hand bar. So we've got move is obviously the arrow, which is the hotkey V to get to. Sorry, that's not move, that's just select. The move tool and the rotate tool and the scale tool are bundled here as well on the left-hand side, and their hotkeys are W, E, and R. With Maya, if you hover over anything, it will give you the name of the button or the function. And for some tools, they will also provide a little bit of information about what they do. So we've also got our viewport options at the bottom of the left-hand toolbar. So we've got the perspective view, we've got the quad view, we've got the two here. So those are our modes. The hotkey to jump between those is just to hit the space bar and release. Just put that back in the middle. So that's the space bar. Along the right-hand side, we have got these little tabs that you can expand if you click on them. One is called the channel box editor, one is called the attribute editor, and the other one is just the modeling toolkit bar, which is a more recent addition to the interface. It's got a lot of the commonly used tools for editing your mesh. I don't usually use this, but this is something that you could look into for yourself. It has got these hotkeys up here to swap between the different modes. So by modes, we mean the levels with manipulation. So the toolkit. Oh, that's okay. I can come by and turn it on for you later. I'm not going to be using it today, so it's okay. So I'm just going to press the polygon cube button, and then I'm going to press R, and I've scaled it up just so that I can see it, so that we can all see it. With navigating in our viewport, I've written them up on the board as well. To navigate, we just hold down Option on the keyboard, Alt if you're on a Windows, and holding down Option, we can left click to tumble around the scene, middle mouse click to pan around the scene, and left mouse click will zoom. So those are just on the board if you ever forget. This is typically the most challenging part of being a beginner in Maya, is just navigating through the scene in order to accomplish what you want. So take time to get familiar with how to move around, how to see something. Another really important hotkey is F. That's to focus on what you have selected. If you have nothing selected, it will focus on a central point of everything in your scene. So for example, I'll show you what that looks like. If I throw in some random shapes and move them way off to the side, deselect and press F, it's focusing on everything in my scene. But if I have a selection and press F, it will focus on that selection. So you can see my cube off over there. Just going to delete that. F. So those split view options is something that I like to use a lot when I'm doing modeling in order to check in with how my geometry is looking from many angles. By default, it should come in at top, front, and side. You can see what yours is set to because it will be named at the bottom of your window. You can easily change what you're looking at in the panel's drop-down menu. Each viewport will have its own separate set of menus, so you can just change under orthographic. For example, you could change it here, or you could make a new one which has more options such as right, bottom, whatever. So that's through orthographic and new. You can decide what you want to be looking at. I'm going to leave mine on front and side because it is giving me a different view of my axes. So axes in a 3D environment are a really important concept to wrap your head around. The axes are represented in the bottom left-hand corner of your viewport. It's a little Y, a Z, and an X. If you hold down Option and left-click, move around your scene, you can see that the axis is adjusting to where you are in the scene. This is a great way to reorient yourself if you're ever confused about which direction you're looking. So Y is the vertical axis, Z is the axis this way, and X is that axis that way, but they work past the way they've been represented in this little diagram. So they'll just continue on that plane forever. So with the orthographic view, I can see when I'm looking at my front, it's looking in the X axis. So down here, it will say front minus Z. So you're not seeing any information about that Z axis. And the side view says minus X, which means I'm not seeing anything about the X axis. And we can explore more about what that represents once we start to modeling. It's a bit hard to see because our cube is totally symmetrical at the moment. Okay. So, as you may remember from class, if you're starting a project, you're going to need to set that up. If you're simply doing a quick, something quick in Maya and you don't plan on using it as a whole project, you will be totally fine to just file, save scene and save your scene. It will open fine, it'll open exactly how it is. But if you're wanting to set up a project where you are then going to create many iterations of your model, you're going to make many iterations of the texturing process through the hypershader, through UVs, if you're going to do a lot of rigging, if you're going to be using a lot of references. So everything that would be bundled up into a larger project, you're going to need to set up your folder structure. So to do that, you need to set the project. Under File, towards the bottom, you have Set Project. You can open up the Set Project window, which is purely to establish the file directory. So we know, so that Maya will know, this is where I want you to establish my project in my files. So if I open Set Project, mine is currently set to users, my name, and documents. I'm fine with that. I'm not going to make a project today because I don't need to, but I'm still going to walk you through it. So you would press set, sorry, let me just go back to that. You would select a folder that you want Maya to create the project in, and then press set. So something that we ran into last time was that people weren't clicking on a folder, so it wasn't setting it to anywhere. So the directory down the bottom says Maya set. it will prompt you to say, do you want to create a default workspace? Because you don't have any scenes yet. Just say, yes, I do want to create a default workspace. Because immediately after that, you're going to the project window bundled into that same area under file. And the project window will show you the set location you just decided on in the location. You can name your project if you press new. So you can say whatever the project name is. So project name, blah, blah, blah. And all of these folders that are displayed underneath is what Maya will create for you for your project. And you just press accept. So your scenes, so what we're currently working with is called a scene, a Maya scene. Your scenes will be saved in your scenes folder from now on. Any images that you create and save will be saved in images or source images. And images that you are using for references can be saved in there for you to quickly access whenever you want, as well as your textures and whatever. Clips will also be where your clips will render if you're doing an animation. And sound and scripts all work the same. But yeah, if you're not planning on making a huge project, you probably don't need to worry about this, but just know that that's how you do it. For now, saving my scene is going to be fine. It's all I want right now is just the geometry. So you can save your scene, which I might do. Save scene as Maya Clinic. Save. So it'll save as a minor binary. That's just what it's called. Right. So now that we've saved, now we've made a project, for example, we can start to model in it. So I threw in a cube earlier. Yeah, I'm going to start with a cube. Like I said, you just want to press W, E, and R to manipulate. I'm going to press R for scale, scale it up. If you do not like the size of this control tool, you can change it very easily by pressing plus and minus on your keyboard. Sometimes it will get in the way if you're working with really small geometry. So please just be aware that it's a very easy and quick fix. So that's just plus and minus on your keyboard. Okay. Backtracking just a smidge. If you're modeling, you may be modeling based on a drawing that you've already done, maybe an orthographic drawing that you've established. We're going to do this more in, for those of you in 200 level, we're going to be doing this in the second semester when you make your toy. You'll be drawing orthographic drawings. So to import a reference image, whether that's a drawing that you've done or just simply an image of a tree or an object or whatever that you're using as you model, maybe not closely, but as reference, the way to import that and see it is to either press this little image plane button in your viewport or go up to, it's been a hot minute, hold on. What was it again? Create. Oh, that's where it is. It's under create free image plane. So I can just click on that and it's going to bring in a blank image plane that will scale depending on what I want to import. So as I mentioned, over on the right-hand side, we've got the channel box and the attribute editor. Under the attribute editor window, we can assign a file to this image plane. In here, you'll find a image name option and there's a folder next door to it. So to click on that folder, navigate to your picture, I just grabbed a simple orthographic for us to understand that concept, pressed F to focus, and now I have a reference image in my scene that I can use to model against. And when I go into my orthographic mode, I can see it there represented in front, which is really useful as well. So that is how you import a reference image. Ooh. Okay, back to the geometry now. Once you've got your reference images in, or if you're not using one, whatever, we can then start to model. What was that? It might be in front of it. I'll come by in a second. So with your geometry, you can manipulate it in different modes. With its green border, this is object mode. In order to change which mode you're editing in, you just hold right-click down, and it'll bring up this new menu. We've got edge, object mode, UV multi, face, vertex, etc. The really useful ones are edge, face, and vertex for now. So vertex will have these corners, everything that has an intersection or a corner is called a vertex in Maya. Edges are simply the edges, and faces are simply the faces. But we can manipulate our images really easily if we start to break it down into these more compartmentalized processes. So that's how we bring up that menu. That was just right click and hold. And if you want to get out of any of those modes, right click and hold back to object mode. And we've got it there. So when we made our image plane and when we made our cube, we have them represented over here on the left-hand side in the outliner. The outliner acts as a almost like layers in Photoshop. It's got everything there that's in your scene. So it's got our cameras that we've established or that were already established. It's got our image plane and it's got our cube. You can either double click to rename or just press enter to rename. I'm gonna just show you how to name things. So it's very important to keep track of, you're going to create a lot of geometry very likely. It's very important to name your geometry descriptively in order to find it. And we can also group things as well. So we'll talk a bit more about that once we have more in our scene. But for now, naming, Maya doesn't like spaces, so do not use spaces. So I'm going to call this wall underscore instead of space 01. It's my first wall. Enter to lock that in. Now let's make it look like a wall. I'm going to scale it so that it's thinner and drag it out. Now I have a wall. The grid here is representing the center of our entire viewport. It is ground zero. It is where all the axes meet, or axes, whatever. If you wanted to snap your geometry to the grid, you can. So I'm going to spacebar and then spacebar again, hovering my mouse over front so that I can see it from the front. This is something that you should pay close attention to because it is a very useful knowledge to have when it comes to Maya. So this is called, oh, I don't remember what this is called, but this thing here, this anchor, we can move. You might find as you get further in your scene that it's moved to somewhere that you don't want it to be. By default, when you create geometry, it'll be in the center. You may not want it to be in the center. You might want it to be at the bottom of your geometry, for example, in order to rotate it from that point. So to do that, you press D, and it's going to let you change it. I'm just going to get back into, yeah. So press D. And now when I move this, my geometry is not moving. It's just my axis, my thingy. I need to know the right word for that. Handle. I'm just going to say handle. Now to get it to align to the bottom of my geometry exactly without any give or take on either side of that point, we want to snap it. So when I hold down X, it's snapping, but it's snapping to my grid, which is not what I want. You can see your snapping options represented by a series of magnet symbols in the top of our toolbar. There's a whole row of different magnets. When you hold X, you'll see one of them is highlighting. That is snap to grid. But I want to snap it to my geometry. So I'm going to just remember which one I want. I'll snap to, okay. Getting too far ahead. So with the snapping, you can snap it to vertices. So if I snapped it to a vertex right now, it's going to jump over here because that's where my closest vertex is. I need to make myself a new vertex in the center of my geometry because I want it to be in the center. So to do that, very easy, we can start to edit our mesh. So under mesh tools, we've got this insert edge loop tool. We've got the multi-cut tool. Those are really useful. Multi-cut tool is, oops, not that one. That's make hole. Multi-cut tool, if you open it up, you can see it's snapping to a vertex by default. It's trying to predict where you want it to be. I want mine to be in the middle of that line. So I'm going to click. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click again. Press enter. And now I have got a new set of lines. So you can see my face is broken up. We've got now 6 parts of our shape instead of 4 parts. Oh, sorry, 5 parts instead of 4 parts, not 6. But I don't want that edge there because that was purely to show you what the multi-cut edge, the multi-cut tool does. I don't actually want that. If you've made an edge that you don't want, deleting it won't do what you want it to do. Pressing delete won't do what you want it to do. To delete an edge properly, this is very important. Hold shift and hold right click and delete edge. So remember how right click gave us that set of menus? Holding shift will just give us more options. So that was just hold shift instead of just the right click, hold shift with it, and it was delete edge. If you don't do that, it will make your life very difficult later. So what I want to do instead is back under mesh tools, I want insert edge loop because it's going to create exactly that. It's going to create a loop around my geometry. If I click on my edge, you can see that it's going to create an edge. It's telling me this is what's going to happen if you let go right now. So if I let go somewhere towards the middle, it's going to make a loop all the way around, which is great. That's what I want. But it's not in the center of my shape. To get it in the center, we can look to the attribute editor. So the attribute editor it works almost like a history of whatever you have selected. These tabs up here, so wall shape 1 is what I have selected. Poly split ring 1 is the action I just did. That's the insert edge loop. And you can see poly delete edge, poly split 1, poly cube 1. This is all the history of things that I have been doing. So that was me using the multi-cut tool and then deleting the edge. And the last thing I did was make that split ring. So if I go to split ring, we can change some of the settings in there. So the weight here, if I toggle that slider, we can see it's shifting its position on my geometry. Really useful, right? Because you can get it set up exactly where you want it to. So if I put it in 0.5, it's going to be completely in the center of that face or those faces. So just a reminder, the attribute editor works as a history record of your geometry, unless you delete your history, which we'll do much later on. Cool, so I have got a split in the middle, right click, object mode. Now I'm going to make my vertex at the bottom. Spacebar, spacebar. I'm going to press W. I can see exactly where I left my thingally. I'm going to press D. Remember, D was to move the anchor. And now I'm going to, up in my magnets, I'm going to press snap to points. And now when I move this, it's going to snap exactly to that vertex. Really useful, super, super useful. Cool. And then you can just press D again to get out of there. Now, if I go over here, we can see my anchor is perfectly at the bottom of this geometry. Sorry?
We rotated it. There we have rotated it. Like not the rotation.
You rotated the anchor when it was in D? Yep. So what you'll want to look at is the channel box. So over in the channel box, it has got all of the information about the translate, rotate, and scale. Your rotate, what was it? Oh, oops. No, I don't know. That's not doing what I thought it would do. Okay, hold on. Let's work on this. If you've rotated it, you used to be able to hold shift and it would snap, but that doesn't work anymore. Maya likes to change. Just eyeball it for now. I'll figure it out later. Back on track. Okay, so now that we've got our anchor at the bottom, now I can snap it to the ground. To do that, you just take off our little magnet that we changed earlier, hold X, and it's going to snap to grid. This slightly darker line, it's hard to see maybe on this screen, but on yours it might be a bit easier. The darker line is the center. It's easier to see if you zoom out. So I'm going to hold X and I'm going to snap to the grid. And now my geometry is flush to the vertices. Flush to the grid, sorry. Great, we have a wall, it's on the ground, it's exactly what we want. We know how to move this thing around. We don't know how to reset the rotation of it, but we'll get there. Okay, so now what you might want to be doing is making a doorway. You could either model a doorway to be in here by adding some edge loops, deleting some faces, etc. Or we could do Booleaning. Maya has, at long last, made the Boolean tool much better because it was really bad before. So to Boolean, we need a second option. Sorry, a second piece of geometry. I'm going to make a cube again. I'm going to scale it up, and I'm going to make a shape. So you may want to model your door normally if you're doing some straight, hard edges. But if you're going for something organic, which is usually the only time you want to use a Boolean function, we can use that. So I'm going to make an organic shape and punch a hole in my wall. You may want to do this if you're doing like a porthole or something. Actually, yeah, let's do a porthole. Okay, I'm going to make a cylinder instead. I'm going to rotate it over in my channel box. I want it to be exactly 90 degrees rotated on the X. Under here, you can see me eyeballing it was 83. I'm just going to hit 90, enter, and now it's perfectly at that 90 degrees. I'm going to move it up. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. I want it to be a big shape. Now, I've got it going through my shape, which is what you want. If you're punching a hole in something, you need to make sure it goes all the way through. If it doesn't, it'll only punch out. So if it's like this, it'll only punch out on that front face. If that's what you want, that's fine. But I want it to go through both. So I'm going to make sure it's through both. To punch a hole in this wall, you select the wall first, hold shift to select the second piece of geometry, and under mesh, at the top we've got mesh, Booleans, we've got hole punch. Hole punch is probably going to be the one you use the most, so it's the only one I'll cover right now. So if you press hole punch, what you'll get is that Maya will make a new piece of geometry, which is over here, poly surface 1. Wall 01 still exists. That cylinder that I created still exists. And poly surface 1 is what Maya has created. If I grab poly surface 1 and move it, we can see that that hole has, the information is still there. But what the beauty about this new the changes that Maya has made is that we can move things still right now if we don't like the placement. So I'm going to select my poly cylinder and move it, and my hole is moving too. Can grab poly surface and we can see it's still got that information. But because I've moved poly surface now, it won't work. So you need to make sure that you've decided on where you want that cylinder to go. I'm just going to put it kind of anywhere. I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is just hide these two earlier pieces of geometry. I don't want to delete them. I'm just going to hide them for now. To hide something, you select it in the outliner and press H. To show it again, you just click on it and press H again. Easy as that. Great, so we know how to punch something out. Like I said, you could model that in. It would just take you a while, especially when it comes to something organic like a circle or whatever. So that's a really quick way to get something going. Okay, let's freehand model a doorway quickly, just so that we get that bit of experience. Oh, actually, it's 12:40. I'm not going to do that. So instead, I'm just going to show you some other things. Right, I'm going to right click face. So we briefly discussed the benefits of the edge loop tool. We've very briefly touched on the multi-cut tool. What we can do, what another really cool tool is our extruding and beveling. So to extrude, you select either an edge or a face. You can't do it on a vertex. And the extrude tool is this button up here that is a 4-grid plane with one of them really tall and orange. Or you can just go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. So if I press extrude, it's going to, oh, I had something else selected. I'm going to quickly make a new shape to avoid confusion. Cool, I've got this shape. I'll grab my face. I'm going to press extrude. And we can use either this box to drag it out in the local translate Z. We can press plus to make this a bit bigger. We can drag it out with the anchor points. That also works if we want to place it somewhere else other than the Z axis. We can create some offset. So it might be going out or it might be going in. We can create divisions. Divisions is incredibly helpful because it's going to put it right in the middle. So you can play with how many divisions you want. 1 will be fine, 2 will be great, whatever. You might not even need any. Great.
How do you bring up that little menu?
So that will come up automatically when you press extrude. So if I click on this face and press extrude, it already comes up. And I can drag it out. Okay. So we've done a very strange looking vent, maybe. Let's go with a vent. Right, to bevel. We can do the same thing where we either grab edges or we grab a face. So I'm going to grab these 4 edges here. Press the bevel tool, which is 2 across from extrude, or it's under edit mesh bevel. And we can also tweak the amount we bevel either here on that window or my preference over in that attribute editor. I think make it a habit to go to the attribute editor to do tweaks because it's a little bit more precise. Whereas the window here is a bit more general. So I like the attribute editor personally. You can add segments to a bevel to make it a beautiful rounded edge. Look at that, it looks fantastic. So extruding, beveling, very useful. Okay, so that's a bit on hard surface stuff. Now, what if I want to make something organic? Right, so I'm going to make another cube, slide it over here, make it bigger. I'm going to extrude my face. So a really quick way that I like to do organic modeling, actually. Let's bring up that minion. A really quick way I like to do organic modeling is to use cubes. Sounds kind of stupid, but working with very limited geometry is going to be your friend always when it comes to organic modeling. So I've got my cube here. I'm going to widen it to be the right width for my friend. Whatever. I'm going to make it a bit taller so that it eclipses its body. And then you can toggle between 1 and 3 on your keyboard in order to preview its smoothed state. So smooth is going to be your friend when it comes to working organically. You can even work in smooth. So if I grab this face, pull it out, we can work with the sense of organic already, rather than working in hard surface. We can even extrude in this way. Do whatever you want. And you can just always check back in with how you're going by pressing 1 and seeing what that shape looks like. 1 and 3. So Let's hide that again. So I'm just going to make something random, some blobby thing. So we've got a little blobby thing. I don't know what you want to make. I don't know, like a tree or anything. If you're modeling away, check how it's looking in its hard surface form and its smooth form. And once you're happy with it, you can bring up that menu again, but you just have to hold shift for more options. And 2 down in the drop down menu, we've got smooth. When you press smooth, you can see it's made it permanent. It has applied that geometry there. We can still continue to play with a further level of subdivisions if we flick between 3 and 1, but I highly recommend that you always approach organic modeling with as few polygons as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be there for a long time making everything perfect. You want to make sure that your overall shape is how you want it first. Okay, a couple more things quickly. I'm just going to delete. I'm going to hide that. Symmetry. Symmetry is really useful in Maya to create things very quickly. In order to use symmetry, we need to make sure that our geometry has a center point. So remember how we did that edit mesh tools, insert edge loop. I'm going to do that with this box. I'm going to create that edge over in my attribute editor. I can go back through this geometry's history, go to split ring and change it to 0.5, bang in the middle. And now I can use this split format to work in symmetry. So up here, we have got the symmetry tab. It currently says symmetry off for you. If you drop down, you can change it to whatever axis you're working in. To double check which axis you're working in, remember it's down that bottom corner. So I'm currently looking at extruding tree to object X. Yeah, makes sense. Now you can see once I've turned that on, that it's reflecting on the other side. So if I grab that and move it, it's going to do it. Really useful. Symmetry is wonderful. Highly recommend. Is that the, no, thought that was a fire alarm. And we can do everything over on one side. Oops, press the wrong button. And it will just duplicate it. So just be aware where you are in the axis, how you're looking in order to have the right menu option on. And you need to have a central set of vertices in order for the information to actually register with Maya. If you didn't have any vertices in the center, you can't be symmetrical. Does that make sense? You need like to be sliced down the middle at all times. If you ever have accidentally moved your vertices, oh, I need to be out of symmetry. If you've accidentally moved them very minimally off that ground zero, your symmetry will not work anymore. So you'll need to return it to the middle. Now, we remember to return things, we can snap them to the grid. So we just hold X and we snap it. Easy. So always remember, we need that middle plane. I'm gonna just, what do I got? Cover. Okay, we've almost covered everything. I'm just going to do some really quick stuff. Okay. I'm making a sphere, going to make it big. I'm going to hide that other thing. Base. And I'm just going to delete the bottom. So we've got this dome that doesn't have a bottom plane. if we want to make a bottom plane on there? We can just simply fill it. So if I go to edge mode, double click to grab a loop. So double clicking will grab a loop. If I double click over here and press F, you can see this orange loop that it's grabbed. So double clicking is really useful. So I'm going to grab that bottom loop, right click and click fill hole, or edit mesh. Is it edit mesh? No. Yes. Okay, I can't remember where it is on the menus, but you just shift right click and you've got fill hole there. And now I've got a plane. Can smooth that to see how it looks. Looks fine. Right. So that's how you fill hole. Bridging. So if I undo that. I'm going to duplicate this geometry so that I have two domes. I'm going to drag it down, but I want to flip it the other way around because I want to create I'll just show you. I want to create a pill shape. I'm going to drag it down, but I want to flip it around. So I can rotate it, but it's not perfect. I can check in my channel box what value just got assigned to rotate Z. It's -185. So I can just set that to 180 and it's flipped itself. Now I want to create a bridge between these two pieces of geometry. I need to first combine them because they are separate, right? In the outliner, they're two different things. I need them to be one thing. So we shift and click to grab both of them at once. And then we hold shift, hold right click. Towards the bottom, we've got combine. And now it's a single object. Now, if we bridge, it's going to very likely create a strange color, but we'll just see. I'm going to go back to edge mode, double click that edge, hold shift, double click the bottom edge. Holding shift is often how you select more than the first thing you've got. Right click, hold shift, bridge. Aha. So it's gone green. That's kind of normal because Maya doesn't understand history very well. We can simply right click, go down the bottom, assign favorite material, Lambert, and it's fixed itself. So now we've got this nice pill color, pill shape. So that's how you bridge. That's how you fill a hole. So as I did those little combining things, over in my outliner, we can see these new icons that are these pieces, kind of like a sideways or angled piece of paper with a red arrow. That represents some historic effects. They can start to trip you up. So very regularly, I recommend selecting your geometry. So you can click drag to select geometry in your scene and go edit, delete all by type, non-deformer history. So it's important that you choose non-deformer history, especially if you've got rigging involved. We don't, but non-deformer history should clean up everything. If it hasn't cleaned up all of them, you can usually go in and individually delete it after you've done that. If you do it beforehand, you might risk destroying your geometry. Okay, one more very quick and cool thing is using curves. So we can use curves in Maya to create organic forms, rope, whatever. So to do that, there's a couple steps. We can go create curves, create curve tools, CV curve tool is the way I like to do it. This gives me the most control. Maya has introduced a slightly new function, but I don't like it as much because it's more of a quick thing rather than letting you decide how you want something to be. So with this with the CV curve tool selected, we can start to plot points. And on the fourth one, we're going to start to see that curve manifesting. And as we continue to make shapes, I'm going to go up now. We can create interesting curves. If we hold it, as we click, we can move it around a bit. All of these points can be altered at any time, as long as the curve still exists. So if I right click, edit point, oh, I need to get off that tool, edit point, I can click and drag. They're very hard to see, but they're little pink X's. We can start to move things around so that we can tweak things. Like I said, you can still tweak these curves once the geometry has been assigned to it. So you might want to save that for once you have some geometry to see how it is actually looking. So let's do that. Let's make a shape. Let's do a rope, a weird rope that's not on the ground, just floating in space. So I'm going to make a poly disc. Press F to focus, and I can see what that little plane looks like. I want to drag it to the start of my, where I started my curve, the very beginning. So if I go over here, there's a blue line. I don't know if you can see it on projector, but there's a little blue line where my shape started. I'm going to rotate my shape so that it follows the kind of angle that I did my curve at the weirdest angle, but I'm going to just try and eyeball getting it slightly in line. That'll do. Okay. So we have a piece of geometry, we have a curve. The diameter of this geometry is going to remain consistent. So this is when you want to set up how the diameter works. So if you want it to be thin, you do that. If you want it to be wide, you can do that. So we have to go to face mode in order to stretch it out. Double click to grab all the faces, shift, click on the curve, continue to hold shift, right click, and we're going to extrude face just here on the bottom. And because it's only a single face that got extruded, it snapped it right to the end. But as soon as we add divisions, we create a row. So you can set it to 60, you can set it to whatever. Depends on how many segments you want. You can use this box to adjust, oh, not that one. Go back to the channel box. I like the channel box. It's got all these options here. You can twist, very useful. Oops. So you can get a spin on it. Or is it, why is that not working? It's too subtle. I need to do a high number, like 1,000. No? Oh yeah, it is slightly twisting. Anyway, that's how you make a rope. And we're at time, so okay, so that should be enough to get you started. But just quickly, one last thing. Say you've got a plane and you want to make it maybe a little bit more lumpy, like sand. We can use soft selection. So I'm just going to grab that shape that I made really, really big. I'm going to go to the attribute editor, go back in its history. Remember, the attribute editor has got history, and I'm going to add some subdivisions to make it a bit more dense so that the soft selection will do some cool stuff. So I've got that there. Now I've got all this geometry to play with. Soft selection means that it'll create a radius. To enable soft selection, you just hit B it's very subtle, but if I zoom in, you can see how if I toggle between B and having it off, there's a little color difference. Oops. If I hold down B and use my middle mouse to drag, I'm going to get this kind of fall off of the center. And the closer it is, obviously, the more the geometry surrounding it is affected. So if I push and pull something, we can see that it's softly selected the surrounding things. So you can use this on a smaller scale and create some very minimal lumps and bumps and dips to create some cool uneven surfaces. You can do this to create some soft blobby characters. Soft selection is really useful. So that was the last thing I wanted to show you. I know that was a lot of things, but if you ever need a reminder, we can just show you. This will be recorded, so you can access this recording and follow along again. But hopefully you were able to follow along with that either just by watching or trying it out yourself. And you've got a bit more of a familiarity of what you can do with Maya at a basic level. Sweet. That's all.